Welcome, age of vintage society. Anthony Perkins is best known for playing Norman Bates in Psycho. Its notoriety and success ensured he remained one of filmdom's most recognisable faces for the rest of his life, and beyond. Yet there were those who felt he never truly shook the screen persona of the knife-wielding, mother-obsessed, cross-dressing psychopath, and he was often labelled on the strength of his most notorious role, thus giving a distorted view of a career which spanned 4 decades and almost 60 movies. Why Anthony Perkins wanted to cure himself from loving men. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. How one unforgettable movie can result in the typecasting that kills a promising career. Let's take a closer look at the actor's entire body of work. Perkins was, they argue, more than just a prominent screen villain. His talent and versatility went much further. His wider oeuvre encompassing everything from romance to comedy, war to western, musical to sci-fi. We will explore the complex life of this enigmatic tortured man. Let's take a harrowing look at the life in the Hollywood closet, and a poignant human drama that will change your vision of Anthony Perkins forever. Presented as the successor of James Dean, Anthony Perkins has long suffered in the destructive shadow of his most famous character. His clean-cut image as the ideal son-in-law established within his first films will not survive it. Fortunately, the actor can play a wide range of characters within both cinema and theatre, and even becomes a music crooner. One of his most famous songs is even covered by Elvis Presley. Perkins knows how to play the macho sheriff as well as a sensitive intellectual, and he relies on the dark side of his private life to build characters as complex as they are fascinating. After having to hide his sexuality in Puritan America, he finds refuge in Paris for several years, where he can live more freely, whilst continuing to make films and record music. Like the infamous character Norman Bates, whom he portrayed in the Hitchcock film Psycho, Anthony Perkins was a loner with a fear of women, due in part to his domineering mother. My video introduces how, to a great extent, his life was an attempt to bury both his mother and Norman Bates. His struggle, which took him through homosexuality, psychoanalysis and drugs, culminated in a happy marriage in his 40s, but was then blighted by AIDS. Born in New York City, Anthony Perkins was the son of actor Osgood Perkins. His father gained fame as a Broadway star and Hollywood character actor. Work caused Osgood Perkins to be away from his family frequently. Young Anthony, frustrated by the absences and jealous of his father when he returned home, he admitted to being abnormally close to his mother and wishing his ever-absent father dead. He got his wish, and the guilt that went with it. Anthony Perkins told interviewers he assumed as a child that his wishes had actually killed his father. Guilt followed Perkins for many years to come. The younger Perkins would eventually speak of having a tortured, emotionally strained relationship with his parents, and feeling deep anguish over the death of his father when he was 5 years old. "There was nothing about me I wanted to be," Perkins said of his childhood, "but I felt wonderfully happy being somebody else." He began a serious pursuit of acting, and at 14 was working in summer stock. By his early 20s he was already established as a teen star. He joined the Union Actors' Equity at aged 15 and began appearing in stage productions, eventually attending Rollins College and Columbia University. His film debut was 1953's The Actress with Spencer Tracy and Gene Simmons. Perkins first gained widespread critical acclaim in 1954 when he replaced John Kerr in the lead role of the Broadway hit Tea and Sympathy. 2 years later he appeared in his second movie, Friendly Persuasion. It earned him a Golden Globe Award for New Actor of the Year and an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Returning to Broadway in 1957 in the play Look Homeward Angel, Anthony Perkins earned a Tony Award nomination for Best Actor in a Play. He earned another nomination for his part in the 1960 musical Green Willow. Among Perkins's additional film successes were his emotional performance as troubled baseball player Jimmy Pearsall in 1957's Fear Strikes Out, and as a naval officer preparing for the end of the world in 1959's On the Beach. In 1957 and 1958, Anthony Perkins branched out into pop music. He recorded 3 albums, and his single Moonlight Swim reached number 24 on the US pop charts. Perkins' early years in Hollywood were marked by sexual ambivalence. He kept up a heterosexual facade for the public and the press, yet harboured a private fear of women. In a dressing room during the shooting of 1960's Tall Story, he hid nervously behind his script as a 22-year-old Jane Fonda powdered her nude body. In the closet, actors Anthony Perkins and Tab Hunter met poolside and began a secret affair, until the studio told Perkins to cut Hunter loose. Secretly, he sought out the homosexual world. In his diaries, Andy Warhol wrote that Perkins used to hire hustlers to come in through the window and pretend to be robbers. Having lost out to James Dean in 1954 for the plum role in East of Eden, Perkins was picked by that film's director, Elia Kazan, as the painfully shy and sensitive young man in Tea and Sympathy on Broadway. Hollywood came calling, anxious to turn the gawky, polite, appealing fellow into a teen idol. Perkins won his only Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor as the troubled son in 1956's Friendly Persuasion, about a Quaker family's attempts to remain peaceful during the Civil War. Perhaps it was Perkins' sexual ambivalence, his difference, that allowed him to feel a special empathy for such outsiders as Norman Bates, the most well-mannered of all big-screen psychopaths. In front of the camera, Perkins somehow tapped into the agonies that ruled his life and was able to transmit them to viewers. But it all might have been otherwise. Has there ever been a film that so greatly influenced and changed the course of a single genre as Psycho? One of the most intriguing leading men of the 1950s, Anthony Perkins' career path changed significantly after he was cast in a thriller from suspense master Alfred Hitchcock. He was being groomed to replace the late James Dean. Then in 1960 his portrayal of the murderous Norman Bates destroyed Anthony Perkins' burgeoning career as a romantic leading man. His performance became a landmark in motion picture history, creating an image that eerily paralleled an off-screen life equally as secretive, conflicted and fractured. Not as it seems, ironically in his most notorious scene, when Norman, dressed as his deranged mother, slices up Janet Leigh in a shower, Perkins remained in the shadows as Leigh's terrified face and violated flesh took centre stage. In fact, Perkins wasn't even around when it was shot. He was rehearsing for a play in New York, and a stunt woman stood in for him. Though the film was a perfect entity unto itself, it was just too juicy a property to let lie fallow, and perhaps Perkins, who was paid a mere $40,000 to play Norman Bates, was ready to cash in on the character who had pigeonholed his career. Reviewers called Perkins' performance the best of his career, though he wasn't even nominated for an Oscar. In some ways his performance was perhaps too good. He so masterfully played a mentally ill killer that he became typecast. Although perhaps equally adept at other types, he continued to play the murderers and the mentally disturbed, as well as reprising his role as Norman Bates in several Psycho sequels. Once he was asked if he could do it over again, would he still accept the role of Bates, knowing he would be typecast in the future? Perkins responded with a confident yes. But Psycho changed any white-bread plans Hollywood had for Perkins. The roles that followed were generally a succession of tormented, sometimes even deranged types. To the last, Perkins remained close to the shadows. In his final feature film, A Demon in My View, he plays a former serial killer. When someone once suggested that Psycho turned into a career curse, he replied self-effacingly, "Without Psycho, who's to say if I would have endured?" The suspenseful movie's scenes of violence and terror challenged the American movie code of the time and invigorated both audiences and critics. As Norman Bates, the handsome, seemingly naive, dangerously insane antagonist, Perkins gave one of the most stunning and effective portrayals found in a movie of this type. Impressively, the actor managed to chill and repel viewers, while also eliciting a degree of sympathy for Norman's plight. His line readings and physical interpretation of the character also added to the film's dark humour. Psycho was a huge success and earned Perkins a great deal of attention, with much praise coming his way. However, it also began the process of him being typecast as nervous, unsociable and often sinister loners, rapidly eradicating his previously established image as the handsome young romantic leading man. The son of a legendary stage actor, Perkins showed great promise as a Broadway star, but his constant struggle with his personal life resulted in a desperate search for acceptance that led from New York to Hollywood to Europe. While the identity Psycho gave him as an actor would be a struggle for Perkins during the ensuing years, he was also wrestling with his own personal demons. Perkins was homosexual and kept his orientation a secret, a ruse aided by various industry people who arranged for him to be seen in photo ops with various lovely single actresses. In reality, he had regular sexual liaisons with show business colleagues like Tab Hunter and actor-choreographer Grover Dale. Perkins suffered great mental anguish over his desires and spent years in therapy trying to cure himself. In the wake of the Hitchcock hit, Perkins was teamed with Ingrid Bergman for the romantic drama Goodbye Again, and he won the Best Actor prize at the Cannes Film Festival. Europe was a place where Perkins found creative satisfaction in projects like The Trial, Orson Welles' dense and challenging adaptation of Franz Kafka's novel. On the occasions where he did accept roles stateside, it was in the offbeat drama The Fool Killer and the Broadway hit The Star-Spangled Girl. One notable American project was Pretty Poison, which featured another indelible Perkins turn as a mentally disturbed man. As before, he was so effective, it further cemented him in people's minds as a cinematic psychopath. Perkins continued to struggle with his sexual identity, and at age 39 had his first heterosexual experience with co-star Victoria Principal during the making of The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean. Ken Russell's Crimes of Passion, he played a sweating preacher who menaced heroine Kathleen Turner. The jacked-up performance perfectly matched the project's darkly campy intentions, though the film, which had to be significantly toned down to avoid an X rating, was widely panned by critics and ignored by audiences before finding a following on home video in a more explicit version. That year, Perkins was also arrested at London's Heathrow Airport and fined £100 for possession of marijuana and LSD. He eventually marries a young photographer, Berry Berenson, with whom he would raise 2 sons. He lived a double life and chose to live in the closet because he feared losing his career. Living as a homosexual man back in the 50s and 60s, it was not easy for actors to live their truth, and so Perkins decided the only way he was going to keep pursuing his career is by not disclosing his orientation. It was crucially important that Hollywood believed Perkins was a straight man. While his career is struggling, Perkins is saved by the return of his most infamous of characters. He agrees to star in Psycho 2, 22 years after the first opus, and will go as far as to direct Psycho 3, definitively reconciling himself with Norman Bates. For 2 years, Anthony Perkins and his wife, Berry Berenson, kept silent that the actor was dying of AIDS. He simply never wanted anyone to know, Berenson said in an interview. He figured if anyone knew, they'd never give him work again. He went twice to stay at the hospital and once as an outpatient, and we went under another name, she recalled. I literally asked myself, who am I today? It was weird. You lose all sense of reality. You can't even be yourself in a situation like this. You're signing Mrs. Smith or whatever. You think that this man has spent his entire life giving people so much pleasure in show business, and this is his reward. He can't even be himself at the end. I mean, people at the Screen Actors Guild are completely into this thing. They're used to dealing with aliases. His attempts to create a new image for himself as a conventional family man were tragically cut short by his death in 1992. Endure he did, with grace and eloquence to the end. He kept his illness quiet, but said in a statement released after his death, I have learned more about love, selflessness and human understanding from the people I have met in this great adventure in the world of AIDS than I ever did in the cutthroat competitive world in which I spent my life. It was a world in which he triumphed by acting out, so to speak, his own private nightmares. Anthony Perkins was one of the rare post-World War II American actors who was as accomplished on the Broadway stage as he was in Hollywood. He continued to take roles on stage in New York City throughout most of his career, despite the oversized notoriety of his role as Norman Bates in Psycho. He left behind a legacy of great performances recognised by award nominations and critical acclaim. His tragic death helped bring public attention to the ravages of the disease. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Anthony Perkins has been forced to live a double life all his life. It was suspected that he had a relationship with Tab Hunter, who also had his personal struggles. So I recommend you another video about why was Tab Hunter's career almost ruined by his own agent.